Hi guys, and welcome to Escape with Watch Reviews. My name is Steve, and today we're going to be reviewing the Octopus OCT01 Titanium Dive Watch. I purchased this watch with earnings that I made from this channel, so thank you guys as always for using my links. It does really go right back into the channel, so yeah, I really do appreciate it. And if by the end of this review you find yourself wanting to pick one of these up, I will be leaving an affiliate link down in the video description. That's where I purchased it from. They had a killer deal on it, which we'll talk about in just a second. So yeah, if you do use that link, again, you aren't paying any extra. This channel will benefit just a little bit from that commission, and I'll be able to keep buying watches like this. The current retail price for this watch is $299 US. That's before any taxes or coupons or anything like that. Follow the store. I think you get an instant discount, and they also do have a $20 discount currently. So yeah, keep that in mind. And during the summer sale, I believe it was, I actually purchased this watch for just over $205 US. So it was a pretty hefty discount on this watch. Yeah, I see no reason not to go with the store. They were great. They shipped it out fast. Everything came in a really good condition. So yeah, I was happy with the store, and I think you should use that store. Obviously check other stores, but yeah, they had the best price at the time by quite a bit. The watch comes in two different colorways that you can see here. We'll be going into detail on this black version, but the blue version differs only in the type of dial and bezel. It uses a matte dial and a matte bezel insert, so you don't get this really cool sunburst effect on the dial, and you don't get this radial pattern on the bezel. So just keep that in mind when you're purchasing. I really do think the blue looks awesome though. The watch case is made of grade 2 titanium. It has a sapphire crystal, screw down crown, screw down case back, ceramic bezel insert, BGW9 Lume, and the watch is powered by the Highbeat PT5000 automatic movement. So there have been a plethora of watches in this style that have been released over the last 2 months. Seastern has one, San Martin has one, and now I think IX&DAO also has one. So and they all look very similar. I think this one has one trick up its sleeve which kind of puts it above all the other watches, and that's the case thickness. And we will get to that in just a moment. I say we get into this full review, but before we do, doing a quick wrist check for the day, getting a little fancy, working from home, thought I would throw on my Escapement Time dress chrono. Absolutely loving this watch. It is, it just looks awesome. I've got no complaints with this thing. Go check out the review right up here. All right, let's get into the dimensions. 39 millimeters at the bezel, 11.5 millimeters thick, 20 millimeter lug width, 45.8 millimeter lug tip to lug tip, and sized up for my 7.5 inch wrist with one link removed. It weighs about 102 grams. So like you would expect from titanium, 102 grams on a bracelet, that is pretty lightweight. I mean, it just kind of disappears on the wrist, and that's also helped by its thickness, that 11.5. I think all the other ones out there are in the 12 millimeter range or 12.5 millimeter range. So this one has got quite a bit thinner of a case, and that's mostly because of that PT5000. Now IX&DAO, they also have a case that I believe, at least on paper, measures pretty close to this in thickness, but they went with a 21 millimeter lug width. So I prefer this kind of more standard 20 millimeter lug width. So yeah, this was the one for me. This is the one that I ended up choosing, and I'm pretty happy I did. I think the size of this thing is just pretty much spot on. So I'm going to go outside right now and throw it on my wrist for you. Here we are on my 7.5 inch wrist, and as you can see, it wears really nice. It might be just a touch small. It's got a really nice compact lug to lug, and it is also very thin, so it wears really, really nicely. Nice and lightweight too, as you would expect from the titanium. It's a very tool watch. There's not much shine on it. You can definitely see once you get it out into the sun here. There is some sunburst to the dial, and there's a kind of a radial pattern to the bezel as well. And I think it all looks really, really nice. And working our way into some more direct sunlight, you can see there's a little bit better, that sunburst pattern on both the bezel and the dial. I think it looks really good, and you know, direct sunlight does get just a little bit washed out, I'll say. But for the most part, the AR coating on the crystal does a good enough job. It's a very contrasty dial, so you shouldn't have any troubles reading the dial on this thing. All right, let's go throw this on some straps and let's get back to this review. Here we are on a Barton silicone strap, orange. Sadly, I don't have anything red for some reason, but yeah, I think that does look very good, very comfortable. This is a perfect setup for a beach or a pool or something like that. It's super lightweight, super comfortable. And here we are on a suede strap from Merkur. This is a pretty good taper. I believe it's down to 16 millimeters, so really nice taper to it. Very light and very comfortable. Love this strap. It's Super, super comfortable. Yeah, here we are on a CNS watch band's sweatpant material, single layer underneath the watch there. Very comfortable. I really do like the strap. It is super, super soft and comfortable, and I think it actually looks pretty cool on watches like these. And here we are on a ribbed nylon from CNS watch bands. This is just a dark gray one. I think it looks pretty good. What do you guys think about that? There's 2 layers underneath the watch there, and just the thickness of this thing just keeps it very ultra wearable, even with the 2 layers underneath it. So very happy with it. The ducks also approve. Let's get back to this review. All right, so let's talk about the case finishing on this thing. And case finishing is nicely done. It is all brushed. As you can see here, you have a kind of an angular brushing on the tops of the lugs here. Flipping it to the sides here, you do have a horizontal brushing along the side. It's nice and consistent. It looks really good. You do have chamfers here, but they are, again, brushed. And again, I mean, they're nicely done. I see no issues with this at all. Flipping it to the crown side here, you got these really cool pointed crown guards there. I think they did a really good job sculpting those. They look really good. You do have a signed octopus on the crown here. It looks like the crown is just like a bead blasted, but I think it fits in pretty nicely with the case, and I do think it tucks in really nicely into those crown guards. So I'm very happy with that as well. Yeah, otherwise, very nicely done. The nice thing about this case here, and I think more manufacturers need to do this, is they actually have a chamfer on this bottom edge here. So this bottom edge of the case is very soft, very, very comfortable, and I've got no complaints with the comfort on this thing. It is amazing. Sterile case back, just your coin edge style. Not a big fan of that. I wish they would just put simple notches in there, but it is what it is. I've figured out how to get these things off, but you can definitely see this titanium. It does scratch. I'm not really sure what grade titanium the back is. They don't mention that. They do say the case is grade 2, but the back is probably just grade 1. I don't know. But I've noticed, you know, the case has held up pretty well. I've had this watch for quite a while. The case back definitely, just because it sits on the bracelet, I think it's getting scratched up a lot. But the case itself holding up pretty well. In an early conversation I had with them, they did say that they put a hardening on there. But you can see it is picking up scratches a little bit already. So just something that you should expect from titanium. All right, let's talk about the bezel on this thing. And I think the bezel is also titanium, but I think it has some steel parts in it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But really nice coin edge grip on it. You can see it is slightly sloped there. You do have a ceramic bezel insert. It's not your typical shiny ceramic bezel insert. It does have this cool radial pattern on it. It is fully lumed as well, so all these white markings here are BGW9 lume. We'll talk about the lume here in just a little bit. But really nicely done, nice and crisp printing on it. And I see no issues with that. The grip, I think, is perfect. The resistance is really nice as well. I'm going to let you listen to the bezel here. So it is a 120 click unidirectional bezel. There's no play in this thing. I've had plenty of titanium watches now, and they all kind of feel the same, kind of a gritty, kind of just not a pleasant feeling when you're turning the bezel. And this is where I think this is partly steel somewhere in here. It feels like a normal steel bezel, and it feels really, really good. Nice and clicky, smooth. Yeah, I've got no complaints with it, even resistance all the way around. It just feels really good. The alignment on this one is just a hair off, but it's not anything that has bothered me. But yeah, man, the bezel on this thing is great. I was really worried about these titanium bezels, but yeah, I think they did some steel magic behind the ceramic bezel insert, and they got this thing really, really nice. Very happy with the bezel insert. All right, let's talk about the crystal on this thing. So the crystal, I tested for sapphire, is positive for sapphire, and it is just a flat piece of crystal. It does slightly stick up above the bezel there, but really not much at all. But it is dead flat. Looks pretty thin as well. There's a little bit of a chamfer on the edge just to give it a little bit of interest, but it's pretty boring. There is some blue anti-reflective coating on it, which you can kind of see on the edge there. I think they could use a little bit more. When it catches certain lighting, it does get a little bit washed out, but for the most part, it's fine. It's not overly reflective in my opinion, and I think it does a pretty good job of showing the dial. There's a lot of contrast on the dial on this one, so just there's a little bit of reflection there, but it's not horrible, not to the point where it becomes so distracting you can't read the time. So yeah, I think they could do a little bit better, but it's not bad. All right, so let's talk about the dial on this thing. So this is a black sunburst dial, or I guess really dark gray sunburst dial. I don't know if you can really see the sunburst. You can definitely see the texture of the sunburst, but yeah, I think it's really nicely done. You have applied markers at all the hour markers here. They are very shallow, I will say, but they do look pretty good, and even under macro, they look really nice. I don't think they are just chunks of Lume. That's not what I'm seeing when I look at it under macro. It's really hard to tell unless you're really looking at it under macro, but I think they just painted the top of these little applied indices all the way. There's no border on it. Like you see with the San Martin, the Lume goes right out to the edge. So it just kind of gives the effect of, those full Lume plots. But yeah, it's definitely an applied index with paint that goes all the way out to the edge. You have really nice, bold white hands here, perfectly sized in my opinion, reaching right out to the minute track. Really nicely done. Black pinion area in the middle there. Very happy with the handset on this thing. I think it looks great. You do have a chapter ring around the outside, and again, they nailed it. I think it looks really, really good. I've got no issues with that. You do have really nice rehaut thickness or thinness, I guess. So that glass looks like it's sitting just right over top, and they made it as thin as they possibly could, and I love it. The Octopus Kraken branding there at the 12 o'clock position. I know it's a love or hate thing. It doesn't bother me. But I know some people that is like an instant turnoff for them. So yeah, that's not a whole lot you can do about that. They don't offer this in sterile dials. They don't offer this in custom dials. It is what it is. If you don't like it, there are other options out there. You do have your automatic and 200 meters down here with the popper red. I think that looks pretty good. The Lume on this thing is excellent. I'm going to pop up a Lume shot, and you can see it against the San Martin on the left and the Sagesse GMT on the right, which I think is probably one of the best watches in my collection as far as the Lume goes. And this thing hangs in there. It is great. Lasts all night long. The bezel does fade a little bit faster than the dial does, but for the most part, the Lume is great on this thing. I've got really no complaints with it. All right, so let's talk about the movement in this thing. So the movement is the PT5000 high beat automatic. It is an Etaclone movement, so it's 28,800 beats per hour. It hand winds of roughly 40 hours of power reserve. I've had pretty good success with this. This one has been running a little bit slow for me, as you can see here, but still within tolerance, I believe, and I am overall pretty happy with it. They're pretty easy to regulate too. So yeah, this one is operated by this 3 o'clock screw down crown here. Again, nicely signed there. Screw in and screw out action is pretty good. I got really no complaints with that. You do get a nice satisfying pop out. First position is your hand winding. Second position is a ghost date position, and I can feel the date clicking around back there. Third position hacks the movement. This is where you set your time. Everything functions as it should. It's nice and smooth. The crown, maybe a little bit wobbly, but really not a problem. It's never been an issue for me. Just don't leave it unscrewed, and you'll be all right. Again, screw in action, nice and solid. Yeah, we got really no complaints with the PT5000. I like the fact that they took advantage of the movement's thinness and made the case thinner. A lot of companies out there, they just keep the same 12.5 millimeter thick case. It is completely unnecessary on a watch like this, so I'm really happy that they slimmed it down as much as they could. All right, so let's talk about the bracelet on this thing. So bracelet is, like I mentioned, 20 millimeters, and it tapers down to 16 millimeters at the clasp. It is made of 3 solid titanium links here. You do have solid end links as well. They are female pivot end links, and they pivot straight down. Nicely finished. The end link fitment in here is nice and tight. I've got no complaints about that. It follows the case curvature nicely as well. There you can see the finishing on that first link is nicely done. The bracelet is very fluid. The bottom edge here has been honed nicely as well, so it's not sharp or anything like that. You do have screw pins for adjusting. I removed one link for my 7.5-inch wrist. Moving our way to the clasp here. This is a stainless steel clasp. You can see there it is polished. I know you can polish titanium, but most of the time you don't polish titanium. So this is a stainless steel clasp. It has the Octopus branding on there, nicely brushed on the top, polished chamfer, which I'm not a big fan of, and then brushed on the side here. 3 levels of micro adjust. It's a nice tiny little clasp. It functions okay. You got double pushers here, fully milled on the inside. Again, nice tight tolerances. This thing opens and closes just fine. Every once in a while you get it where you push the buttons and it doesn't want to open, but for the most part it works just fine. I like that it's a nice small clasp. It kind of balances out the titanium case. Overall, it feels very balanced on wrist. I do like 3 levels of micro adjust. Obviously more would be better, but I was able to get a good fit, and I think you guys will too. But yeah, for the most part, the bracelet on this thing is perfectly acceptable. It's pretty good. You can see the tolerances right there. Pretty nice and flexible. It doesn't really jangle around too much. It is a fully articulating bracelet, as you can see here. So that's pretty cool. Most of the time on these 3-link bracelets, you get these outer links and then this link here, which are kind of stuck together, so they don't really bend. But on this one, everything is independent and it flows very nicely. So super comfortable bracelet. I'm really happy with the bracelet on this thing. So there you go, guys. That is the Octopus Kraken OCT-10, fully titanium, almost fully titanium watch from Octopus. I do really like this brand. I think they're doing some really good things, keeping that thinness down. Obviously a titanium case and a titanium watch, and a watch this thin, still 200 meters of water resistance. I went swimming with this thing in the springs the other day. I had no problems with it. Yeah, it's great. Nice movement as well. Crisp bezel action. There's not a whole lot you can complain about. The bracelet on this thing is excellent, fully articulating, and just flows really nicely. Yeah, there's not a whole lot that I would change on this one, and this is the reason why I went with this one. It's just a little bit shorter than all the other ones, and it's a little bit thinner than all the other ones with a standard lug width. So yeah, I really do like this watch. I think you guys will too. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.